You're listening to Parasearch Radio, news, views and reviews from the world of the paranormal from across the UK and beyond. Find us on Facebook, Twitter and the World Wide Web. Parasearch UK Radio. Parasearch Radio, broadcasting to the UK and beyond.
The views and opinions expressed by presenters and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Parasearch Radio or its affiliates and sponsors. Listener discretion is advised. Welcome to Haunted Histories with your host Penny G. Morgan, right here on Parasearch Radio.
And good evening, everybody. I hope you're all well, and I hope you can hear me loud and proud coming to you from Haunted Histories on Parasearch Radio. Yes, it's Penny G. Morgan. What were you all up to? I'm sure somebody will appear in the chat room in a minute to say hello. But, oh, what a week I've had. What a week I've had. Friday last week, I investigated the Kurzel in Southend. Well, I'll be doing a show on that with the guys from Fright Nights Essex in March, I believe it is. I think it's March the 20th or something along those lines. So we'll talk about it in that. And I'll also be talking about it in my next book. That's right, my next book. Because my book launched this week. Yes, my Haunted History is now out and available on Amazon to purchase in good old paperback. So, real copy. Hi, Richard. Good old paperback, or if you want to download it for an electric copy, you can do that too. So don't forget, if you do download it or you buy it and you read it, please leave me a review, because Amazon likes that kind of thing. It likes that kind of thing, and it's also nice for me when I see a review and those 5 stars coming up. So you might hear clunking in the background. My husband's going fishing tomorrow for 3 days, and he's decided at this point, when I'm live and the microphone's going, to start moving all his gear around. So I will be thumping him later. So please don't anyone report us if you hear screams from this part of Essex. That'll be me killing my husband for deciding to get all his fishing gear out at this time. Hi, Gemma. Hi, Gem. Okay, so my guest tonight is coming to us all the way from Canada. Well, actually, we say he's coming all the way to us from Canada, but he's actually coming over to the UK soon. And it is the wonderful Mr. Wes Coleman of Cops. Hi, Wes.
Hey, how are you? How is everybody out there today?
We're very good, thank you. We're very good. Are you actually speaking to us from work at the moment?
No, I'm actually at home in my office here, where I write all of my novels that go on Amazon. No, I'm just kidding. That's your
Are you teasing me, Mr. Coleman?
Congratulations on your new book. I think that's awesome, and keep up the good work. Let's go for number 2.
Oh, definitely. I'm hoping late summer, probably, it should be finished. It's got a lot more research in it. It's a bit more, less just accounts of things and a bit more technical type research and everything. I thought I'd push myself out of my comfort zone for the next one. But it's definitely well underway. So it's going to be a novel then, is it? Like if you're out of your comfort zone, it's going to be something like a Harlan? No, it's actually called My Haunted Experiments, the next one. And what I'm doing is I am looking into the background of, and I can't remember whether it's 3 or 4 paranormal experiments that have been done. So the Estes method, trigger methods, that kind of thing. So really looking into the history of those. And then trying to conduct some of them on an investigation to see what happens. Comfort zone, that kind of experiment side isn't something I've ever particularly looked into. I've kind of probably winged it, so that's where it's pushing me out of my comfort zone, looking into the history and the background of those, and how they came about and who started them and what their motivation was to start them. So that's where it's out of my comfort zone in that respect.
That's excellent.
But It's actually one of the people who's in the chat room tonight. She's partially to blame for that one actually being triggered in my head, and that's Gemma. Because
yeah, I figured it.
Yeah, she's a troublemaker, isn't she? It was when we did the Daily Mail shoot. Her and a couple of the others were talking about different sort of experiments to do on paranormal investigations, and that's what made me think of the idea for the next book. So, yeah, it's her fault.
Awesome. That's awesome.
I'm surprised she hasn't put anything rude in the chat room yet. She's obviously not.
It's coming. I'm sure it's coming.
It's coming. It will be coming in a minute. Yeah, definitely coming in a minute. So, Wes, how did you... Hi, Kerry. How did you get into investigating the paranormal? Because you're a corrections officer, hence the name COPS, because it's Corrections Officers Paranormal Society or something. Is that how the name
Correctional Society. That's correct. Yeah. Well, it all started about 10 years ago. I mean, it started as a group 10 years ago. I've always had a fascination in the paranormal. Ever since I was a kid, I used to read a lot of books. Always interested in not only the paranormal, but like the Sasquatch or the Bigfoot.
Like cryptozoology and all that kind of thing.
Yeah, basically, the whole kind of area of it. But really, my draw was towards the paranormal. And then I started seeing shows. The very first show that I started to see on a regular basis was Most Haunted in England.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And there's a lot of for me, it's all about the history of places. I really love to learn the history and try to tie in all the the paranormal stuff with the history of the place. And so, when they would do those shows on Most Wanted, you'd have Richard Felix talk about the history of the place, and then they would try to put together some of the paranormal activity that was happening with the history, which was really interesting. There were things that, I kind of treated it as the Bible of shows until I got into the paranormal field, like hands and feet. And then I realized, there's a huge distinction between TV and actual paranormal investigation. Mm-hmm. I mean, a lot of TV shows are just out there for ratings. Mm. And so there's a lot of things that I looked at on the show, and after doing a lot of experimenting, doing a lot of research, I realized that, well, it just doesn't happen like that. Mm. However, when I got really interested in it, it was around 2008, 2009, and I was on the emergency response team at work, which is like the riot team. Whenever there's a serious situation, we go in. And I bravely got up in front of a mass, there was about 15 guys that are full of testosterone, and thinking, oh, these guys are really going to give it to me if they I was looking to have 3 or 4 other people join me, and I thought they're going to think I'm just crazy. I got up enough nerve and I said, listen, this is a passion of mine. This is something I really want to do. Is anybody interested in it? Go to old prisons, old psychiatric facilities, places that would be, full of energy that would really, get the hair up on your back of your neck. Because that's, as an emergency response team member, that's what you drive for. You drive for the adrenaline. And, 3 guys stepped up to the plate, Terry, Chris, and Darren. And we just kind of started from there. We just went with it. We talked to another Canadian paranormal group that was established called CHAPS, Canadian Haunting Paranormal Society is what it stands for. Mm-hmm. And they really helped us kind of go in the direction of evidence-driven paranormal investigating, and that's what we're all about. We really are strong on the evidence.
Okay. Well, Gemma is in the chat room, and she said to say hello. And I just want to clarify. The Kerry, the boss, is now saying they're going to sue me when I do the experiments book because it's obviously Gemma's idea.
Nice that everybody gets along over there.
Isn't it just? Yeah. I just want to clarify. the book wasn't Gemma's idea. It was her and a couple of the others talking about some of the experiments they've done. I think one of them was infrasound, that then gave me the idea. And so I looked into some of the experiments that interest me. So, though Kerry, no, they're only joking. They like to tease me because I don't do these lives very often. So the fact that they're teasing me in the chat room, they're trying to throw me off my stride here, Wes. It's not fair.
Yeah,
really,
well, you know, that's what friends are for, right? I mean, I know what it's all about.
Well, I have heard of chaps because I was watching some of the YouTube videos of the place where we're going to be talking about shortly.
Yep.
And I know you've done a few joint videos with chaps because they investigate it quite a lot as well, don't they? So, what do you think the fact that you're a corrections officer? What do you think it can bring to an investigation, maybe, that having that occupation doesn't... Oh, I can't even think of the words I'm trying to ask now. What do you bring, having an occupation like that, to an investigation that somebody else may not?
Well, that's a great question. I mean, really, you know, we're kind of a fearless group. It takes quite a lot to. I mean, you can imagine the situations that we've been involved with in the prison system. I've been in the system, you know, the better part of 25 years, and I've dealt with so many different situations. The guys that are with me are, you know, we go into, like, you know, without getting into descriptions, into situations where we count on each other, we trust each other, and we're basically brothers because our lives are in each other's hands.
Yeah.
And when you go in to do a paranormal investigation, I think it's really important that you're all on the same page. You all have each other's backs.
Yeah.
If something happens, you know you can count on the other person. And it comes down to trust. And when you get involved in situations in a paranormal setting where, you know, I'm sure you've, you know, been there before, where things are like, wow, they're escalating really quickly. You can feel things are happening. You know, those guys are there. They're not going to run off screaming or, you know, be afraid. I mean, we really want to be right in the middle of that. Like, we love to be afraid, basically. We call us crazy, but it's all about the adrenaline with us. We like that adrenaline. We like the push, you know.
So have you ever been afraid?
I've been startled before. Afraid as in, you know, running out of a place. That probably would never happen. I mean, you know, maybe Richard Estep can prove me wrong there in the next couple of weeks. But
well, I was going to say, are we allowed to talk about where you and I are both going to be doing an investigation for in the next few weeks?
I think that's a bit under wraps, I think.
Okay. Well, we're actually going to be on a joint investigation, though, aren't we, in a couple of weeks, Wes?
Yeah, we are. We're going to, when I come over, we're going to go to a specific location, and I'm hoping that, you know, that it won't be enough that I'm going to be running out of there afraid. But I've been startled. I've had things happen to me, but instead of having the reaction where I want to get the heck out of there, I get excited. Actually, yes. I start going, wow, that's great. You know, like I remember I had something flick my ear, like just actually flick my ear. But it was on a day tour. It wasn't actually even during an investigation. It was a day tour of Mansfield Penitentiary or Ohio State Reformatory.
Yes,
it's where the Shawshank Redemption was filmed, and it was just an incredible feeling. I'm like, I've never had a physical. I mean, it's not an assault, but a physical. You know, thing happened to me before until that point, and I just thought, yeah, that is the totally coolest thing ever, you know?
Isn't it just? I must admit, I've never been scared. I want to be scared by something. I want to do the, you know, almost do the Yvette Fielding scream and what's that? Did anyone feel that or see that or hear that, whatever? It's not happened yet. I'm still hoping, and like you say, you never know. Mr. Estep might happen with him, but.
Well, please don't do that when we're down there. Please don't scream.
I don't do scream. I might do a "wah" if something happens, but I tend to get more excited by things, and like a child who's had too much sugar. That's kind of my... And then it normally gets even worse because I'm bouncing around like a child who's had too much sugar, which seems to ramp up the energy even more, and it sort of escalates even more from that, which pleases everyone else. So, yeah, I am the sugar battery in that respect. But yeah, I've never been scared. I really want to be. And
leave your screaming for another place and time, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, I don't do screaming. I really don't. I really don't. Like I say, I might do the surprise woo at things, which everyone does. But no, I'm not. This sound. You wanted sexual innuendos, Wes? I'm not a screamer. Yeah. I'm not a screamer.
I was wondering if you got onto that. I know Gemma did.
Well, Gemma's actually asked me to ask you a question.
Okay.
And I do have to say hello to Mark, to Mr. Duds as well. He's going to be my guest on next week's show. We're going to be talking about Rougham Airfield. Gemma's asked me to ask you, what's your favourite item to whip out?
Oh, boy, here we go.
Mm-hmm. Told you she's a troublemaker, that one.
Well, you know what I really like is the ovulus, and it's about 12 inches long and about 3 inches wide, and it's amazing. Like, it's just, like, the amount of information I get from that is... but it's all a push-pull thing, right? But anyway, go on to
I'm not a screamer. I'm not a screamer.
Okay. Next question.
Next question. I had to ask that because she did put two very sort of laughing emojis next to the points, so I thought, well, she'll be chuckling away listening to this probably. Is it this just goes to prove one of the things that I try and hammer home to people when they come onto an investigation for the first time, is that you don't have to be straight-laced the whole time. You don't have to be all sort of somber, and you can crack jokes, you can have a laugh, you can all that kind of thing, and that actually produces a hell of a lot of energy. Would you agree?
Well, this is it, right? I mean, this is a hobby. It's a passion, but it's also a hobby. Mm-hmm. And the guys that are with me, we're off and playing pranks on each other and having fun. And but there's a time and a place for it, right? I mean, there's the serious part of the investigation, and then if things are kind of quieting down and we want to just add a little bit to it, then we have our little fun, right? So. But at the end of the day, this is our spare time, and our jobs are very serious. They can be very dangerous at times, and it's nice to just have that release, to be able to. Yes, I am still talking about paranormal investigating here, but it's nice to just have fun and have a good time. But at the same point, as I said, be very serious, and when it comes down to evidence, be very particular on the things that that you put in. Yeah.
Now, I think I said it. The group that was with us at this place, the Kurzel I went to on Friday, they were all very sort of, almost like hands clasped together and all that, and nothing was happening, and it was pardon the pun, very dead, and someone's stomach rumbled, and I just said, "Come on, own up, whose stomach was that?" And nobody admitted to it. And then I said, I know it's one of your stomachs. I said, because I'll know it's not paranormal, because when I play back my digital recording, it's going to sound like Satan's trying to talk to us. And that just set them all off. And from then on, they were sort of, when it was quiet, they were coming out with jokes, or, when we had some major activity at the end of the night, they were sort of not goading whatever was doing what it was doing. That's the wrong way. Encouraging it, sort of, come on, you can do better than that. Come on, and like bantering, to laughing and bantering and stuff. So there was no teasing or being nasty. It was like it was one of your mates who you're having a laugh with, and a lot of them were quite surprised that works. So it is one of the things that I try and convey. And I guess from what you were saying about being the fact that as a corrections officer by trade, you're used to being in a good team, that you rely on your team, but there must be that connection, that kind of connection, that you kind of know when someone needs to crack a joke to maybe lighten the atmosphere a bit, or to bring someone else into the group. I mean, would you do that as a sort of a tool, I suppose?
Like, well, first of all, like when you use sense of humor, I mean, we all think that, we're very serious when we do investigations, but, if there is spirits out there that, once lived on this earth, they're not going to want to be like serious all the time. They're going to, and they often do play games, right? Like there are things that happen where you go, okay, they're messing around with me, like they're coming up to me, and then they're like, I hear a noise in the corner, and then all of a sudden they're right in front of me again. And like little kids, especially, you get that playfulness, or, any kind of toys or anything that you bring as props. It's, you have to keep it light to a degree too. And especially depending on the atmosphere that you're in, like if you're in a jail cell and I'm talking to an inmate that's, been in for 30 years for killing however many, people, I mean, you just, that's probably not going to work.
No.
But, yeah, for sure. Like if you, like within the four of us, we often, once or twice a year, we as I say, I don't want to, I'll just stop it right there. I'll let you ask the next questions, because I'm going to get into the Picton Heights here.
Yes, we are going to be talking about Picton in a second. But no, the reason I was asking is I tend to find people who work in quite serious jobs tend to have quite a good sense of humour, because they have to. That's how they get through their day job. And I used to know some prison officers in the UK who had the driest, most killer sense of humour I'd ever met. And they said that's how we get through what we have to do on a day-to-day basis, is that sense of humour. So I wondered if that was kind of something that was the same in Canada, that, you do have to have quite a dry sense of humour to do the kind of job you do, because it's not an easy job. And if that then translates, because the group of you have all got that connection.
Oh yeah, it's dry, I'm telling you. It's that sense of humor is part of our career, where when we are out in public, we have to put a filter on, because like me talking to you, the things that you say sometimes, and the things that on the Supernatural show, and I did, kind of break it a little bit, but there's always the innuendos going on in my mind that I'm saying, okay, no, I can't say that. That's just like something, and so I come across maybe as being a little too serious, but once I'm with people that I know and I can trust, I can let my hair down a bit, if you want to call it that, and just be myself, right? Yeah. But yeah, for it's almost like a plague, really, because we have to be very careful. But amongst ourselves, there's things that we say is off the charts, and we have to be really careful, because a lot of our stuff's filmed, so we got to be especially careful about that, because if we do public stuff on YouTube and that sort of thing, they don't want to offend anybody. So
yeah, and people do get offended quite easily these days, don't they?
Absolutely.
Fragile little flowers. So where has been we'll put Picton to one side, because we are coming on to Picton shortly. Where has been your most intriguing place that you've investigated?
Well, there's been so many, I know, like I would probably say that, like, I really did enjoy the Ohio State Reformatory, because we actually had a conversation, and it's posted on our website as well as YouTube. We actually had a conversation with an inmate that burned himself alive in a cell, covered himself with oil and butter, and the heat could be felt like 3 cells down when the guy killed himself.
Yeah.
And we did an EVP session in there, and we used a REM pod, and it's best to look it up on YouTube. But we were in there, and we were asking questions, and we weren't getting any response at all. So we decided we would walk down the range, and the range is basically the pathway that goes by all the cells. And we walked down the range and started asking questions, and the REM pod started to answer us. So we would say, is that the inmate's name was Lockwood. Is that you, inmate Lockwood? And it would go off, and then we'd say, and it would go steady, and then we'd say, okay, Lockwood, turn that off, and then it would turn off. And then we'd say, if that's you, Lockwood, can you turn it on again for us? And then it would go on. And we were probably about 40 feet away from the cell, and we had a fixed camera on the iPod, or not the iPod, the REM pod, and it was amazing. And when we were doing EVP sessions later in that area, we were getting like crackling noises on the EVP, like almost like a fire burning kind of crackling, and I was pretty impressed with that. I mean, that's
you're not the first people to get that kind of evidence at that place, though, because I've seen a few, even a few television programs that have got almost identical evidence. And exactly the same, that this Lockwood won't talk to them until they leave his cell. Yeah. That's quite interesting.
And there's no power or anything in there, like nothing that would cause it to, go off or anything like that. So, I mean, like the way we work is we never say that something's 100% paranormal. We just, make the suggestion that, wow, that was cool. And who knows? Like, I mean, it could have been a coincidence. It could have been a huge coincidence. Yeah. But, we're not trying to prove anything to anybody. We're just we're doing it for ourselves, right? Yeah. So we really don't care if, somebody goes, well, that's a crock of crap. That's not that way at all, And it's like, okay, well, if that's what you believe and that's what you believe, I don't take any offense to it. I'm like, okay, well, that's just, that's what you believe. And, just with that.
I say I don't have a problem if people question something I've said or something I've discovered, or discovered sounds very arrogant, but something I've said happened. If they say, well, did you check that it was this? Did you check it was that? And yes, I did. Yes, I did. Yes, I did. If I didn't, and I'll be like, that's a good point, I didn't check that, I will do next time. I don't mind people questioning, but just, as you say, saying something was a crock of crap, that's not really helpful, is it?
It's always good
I'm like, nah, you're all right.
Yeah, it's always good to try to be productive when you talk to somebody, like CHAPS, for instance, and they're an amazing team, Canadian Haunting and Paranormal Society. They have taught us so much. And so when we have something, we'll send it to them and they'll go, well, like maybe try doing this next time or whatever. The biggest thing with us is that we really like to cross-reference everything. So if we get evidence of one thing, we want to try to get it on a second, third, or fourth thing, just to make sure that the actual thing is going on, whatever it is, right?
Yeah. So, cool.
And they're very good with that. They're an exceptional group as well.
You see, we were talking about Gemma, and Kerry was trying to wind me up that I'd stolen one of Gemma's ideas, but Gemma's basically said that she doesn't care I can steal any of her ideas. That's what she put in the chat room. I think that's where it's important to surround yourself with people who have skills, because, as I say, my skill isn't the equipment side. My skill is the history side.
Right.
Gemma's, for example, is equipment. And, so for something like that, and Kerry, for example, her side is the spiritual side, so using things like crystals and things like that to garner energy.
And you bring up a very excellent point there, because each one of us on our team has a specific role. Yeah. Although we're all together, we all share in this. We're 25% partners, all four of us. We all have our areas of expertise. Like Darren, he's our tech guy. He deals with all the equipment, everything to do with that. He puts gadgets together. He's incredible. And then we have Terry, and Terry is the public speaker. And I apologize he couldn't be here with us, but he had to last minute. He had to go to work, and he is so good in front of the camera. He filmed a TV episode at our place, the Picton Heights, with a paranormal show. And Chris he's our research guy. He does all the research. And I kind of do all the networking. I get to know everybody from everywhere, and try to work into different places and meet new people, learn new ideas. Because for us, it's all about the learning. Like we just can't absorb enough. Like we do not profess to be experts at all. We really enjoy working with different groups, learning about how they do things. I mean, we may not agree with the way they do things, but the things that make sense to us are just tremendous assets to our group, and it's all about learning. It really is. It's not about trying to prove that you're better than somebody else, or my group's better than you, or it's about learning from the experiences you have. And there's so many groups that have done that for us. Richard did that. Richard Estep did that in the fall in Colorado. He invited us out. We love that. And, in a couple of weeks' time, I'm going to really enjoy being down there with you guys and learning the way you guys do things. And it's that's what it's about. And that's what makes it fun.
Yeah. Oh, I agree. You're preaching to the converted. In fact, it was funny enough, it was a conversation, I think it was Gemma and Kerry, we were having it, that not enough people ask questions. Not enough people say, I don't really understand that, tell me more. It's almost that they expect, it's almost that they feel they look weak by admitting they're learning. I learn every day. I learn every time I read a new history thing. I learn every time I talk to someone for this show. I hate to say, I even learn off Facebook. When people have posted about something and I think, not really sure what they're talking about, let's look into it and learn something. It's all about picking up knowledge. I'm with you there. And getting on to Picton, when we first started talking about this, I taught you something about Canada that you didn't know, didn't I?
Yes, you did.
Do you remember it?
No, I don't.
The Arnold scheme?
Oh, yes, but you were going to into that a little more, because that was it your uncle? That was or your grandfather?
My grandfather.
And
yeah.
New Brunswick, right? And Moncton. I think it was Moncton, New Brunswick, right?
Yep. See, the reason this actually ties quite nicely into what we're going to talk about with Picton is, I say I've done a bit of the history on it. I didn't do too much because I thought Terry was going to come, but so hopefully I'll cover enough. But when we're talking about Picton Heights, the building that we're actually talking about. And yes, Richard, I know you gave me a 5-star Amazon review. I'm very grateful for the 5-star Amazon review, and if I did actually mention how lovely it is to see a 5-star Amazon review, so thank you ever so much. And I'm only teasing, and I'll always forget about the Henry VIII thing. You know I will. Hence, you're going to be proofreading the next book. Okay? Sorry, it's the chat room. I have to, I've got to keep them happy. Got to mention their names. But so, Picton Heights. Picton Heights is part of, or the building we're looking at was. It was the barracks, wasn't it, for the Air Force back in World War II originally?
Yeah, started in 1941 as a school, like a bombing and gunnery school, but it's not just like a couple of buildings. It's 5 square miles of buildings. We center our investigations on 3 large buildings there that were considered the base headquarters. We haven't been able to get into because now it's the base is separated and it's owned by different people. So we're working on getting into different parts of the airbase. The original structures are still there. The hangars that are built out of wood, like wood shingles and the old glass. I mean, they've done several movies. They filmed several movies there. Yeah. But we specifically concentrate on the person that owns the property that we do our investigation on. It's a paintball place during the day. Do you have paintball over there?
Yes,
so
we do.
Huge thing, right? And it's massive. And it's a great place for one. But he lets us take care of the paranormal stuff at night and usually on the weekends. And go ahead.
That's right. Well, the reason I mentioned the airbase thing first, before we then go on to what it was used for after the war, so to speak, was that it was actually built as a part of something called the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan, which was the 4 main Commonwealth countries, so Australia, New Zealand, Canada and the UK, sort of pooling their resources to train pilots and navigators and that kind of thing, and train them fast, because they realised they needed quite a lot. Now, where this links into the thing that we were talking about, what's called the Arnold Project or the Arnold Scheme, was a similar thing devised by an American, I think he was a general, called Hap Arnold. Henry H. Arnold, and he devised a very similar plan to what was the British Commonwealth Edge. I think there was three in total, three of these sort of let's train pilots and train them fast plans. And it was actually my grandfather was part of, he was based at somewhere called Moncton, which, sorry, they're making me laugh in the chat. The person who put the 5-star review on has said he's offended now and he's deleting his review.
Oh,
He's kidding. He knows he's kidding. He only lives 10 miles up the road from me. If he isn't kidding, I'll be going up to his house and forcing him to rewrite the review.
Enough money to write it.
Sorry?
I said you paid him enough money to write it, so
exactly.
you might as well.
He's being cheeky. They're trying to throw me. This is what it is. Anyway, so my grandfather was based at Moncton, which was one of the training sites. There was loads of them all around sort of Canada and sort of the borders with America, where they were basically training pilots, and a lot of them that were doing the Arnold Scheme were flying the Stearman aircraft, which are those amazing ones where it's got the radial engine on the front. But there were obviously different levels of training. So you had the basic training, then you had the slightly, intermediate, and then you had the advanced when they would be flying close enough to the actual aircraft that they were going to be flying in combat. And this was kind of what Picton Heights, it was one of the things Picton Heights was used for, but under the British Commonwealth Air Training Plan. And I believe the runways are still there, aren't they? The original runways, because they're still used as an airfield now. They're used for not hand gliding, but gliders, Yeah.
That sort of thing. Yeah, exactly.
You ever been up in one of those?
No.
No?
And you probably never see me up in one of those. It's enough for me to get on a plane.
Really?
I mean, I couldn't even sit in a high chair as a kid. I mean, I just the height and that. But no, I'm just kidding. But is that what you call them over there? High chairs? Like the kids sit in them.
Yeah, baby chairs, high chairs. Yeah, yeah. I first went up in a glider when I was 11. My dad's was a gliding instructor for a very long time. So I'm all about aeroplanes. You don't have to ask me twice to get in one. Anyone.
That question you said about being afraid, well, yeah, that would probably, I'd probably shit myself, yeah.
Well, you said if running out of a place you're investigating, there is one thing that would make me run out of one, and it's not anything spooky. It's if there were birds or bats in it, flying around, then you'd get me running out fast.
We do have resident bats, and we also have the occasional raccoon. Do you know raccoons?
Yeah,
you have those?
Raccoon wouldn't bother me too much because they don't.
Okay, well, they totally come out of a closet and you're doing it, and they're quiet. You're doing a
I see what you're saying. So, Picton Heights. So the building we're actually looking at, the photo that I put up of one is actually what would have been the barracks at one point.
No, that wasn't the barracks. The picture that you put up that's the main offices of the base.
Sorry. Okay.
Okay, that's it.
So the administration building, that kind of thing.
Yeah. Exactly.
Okay. But after the war, it changed its use and became known as Prince Edward Heights. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it was a hospital for the mentally disabled.
Right. Now, that didn't happen until around 1971. Mm-hmm. It was a military base up until 1969. And what's really an interesting kind of, trivia note is that I was actually born there in 1967, and it was a military base.
Right.
So I do have some connections there, and I do feel like when I go there, I feel it's kind of a strange feeling. I mean, obviously, feelings are something that are very subjective, but you kind of feel like you're coming home a bit, and you kind of feel that you have a little more you have a little more in common with the people that are there. And you know, I shouldn't say that, like the military people, because it was, as you said, it was two distinct facilities. Up until 1969, it was a military base, and then after that, it was a mental institution. And yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, sorry, no, I was agreeing with you. Yeah, it's funny how buildings can be repurposed and not have anything in common with what they were. But I do think that you have got two sort of things that historically can produce quite a lot of activity from the paranormal perspective. You've got the military side, which always seems to be an active kind of, everywhere I've gone that's got a former military link, you don't have to wait long for something to happen. And the same with anywhere that's got a kind of hospital or caring link, whether it be as a place where people with mental disabilities lived, whether it's a conventional asylum, whether it's a conventional medical hospital, whichever it is, that seems to produce a lot of activity. And you've got both of these at Picton.
Yes, and you know, it's quite a unique situation because you know, in all the, I mean, we've been there now for the better part of 6-7 years, and we found that it's really crazy, but they don't seem to overlap. Like the time strands don't overlap. So you wouldn't get, like, if I were going in one night, I would get some evidence of things going on from when it was an asylum, and then another night I'll go in and it'll be stuff like military stuff, but they never seem to overlap. Right. So I don't know. That's a very interesting study in its own. Like, do times overlap? Like, do the people from when it was asylum talk to the people when it was a military base? You know, it's really strange. There's definitely that division there.
It's definitely something to look into further, isn't it? Is why is there no overlap, and do they kind of have agreed days almost when they're allowed to come through?
It's a crazy thought, but most of the time it's asylum stuff, and I think it's just because of the energy was so vamped up during that time. I mean, there were so many, you know, they were mistreated terribly. The the mentally challenged back then were you know, thrown into a place, and you know, even if they, you know, just had something subtly wrong with them, once they went in, they never came out. It was like they threw away the key, and they did all these experiments on people in there. And
has that been proven? Because I know I did see an article when I was doing my research, and there's a case going on where if people were residents there, because I want to make the distinction, because one of the things that people are getting very protective about, and I've read articles by people who work there who said this was not a conventional mental asylum in that sense. Someone with depression wouldn't have gone there. It was for people who had mental disabilities. So, you know, maybe someone who suffered with something like Down syndrome or something like that would have been living there, not someone who had a mental illness that could be a mental illness as opposed to a mental disability. And that was one of the things they were saying, look, you know, please get that distinction. But I did also see a case that there was the contact numbers for anyone who'd been a resident there to contact, because there had been a lot of compensation claims being paid out. Well, there's a group case going on for people who'd been mistreated there. So it's not... The reason I'm saying this is a lot of people automatically assume anywhere to do with the mentally ill, people have been mistreated, and it's not always the case. Not always the case.
Right.
But in the case of Picton, there has been cases of maltreatment, and people are receiving compensation as a result.
And that came around 20 years ago. They put the class action lawsuit in, and however, even to this day, there are employees there. A lot of them are deceased now, but the employees have come forward. I don't know whether it's a guilt thing or what, but they're very, like, they'll talk about what's happened there, but they don't want their names published or anything like that. They're still, you know, some of them are still afraid to this day of, you know, the information that, you know, that they carry with them. But they'll let us know. And again, we're not there to prove to the public, you know, this is what happened, this is what went on. We're there for the paranormal aspect, so we get that information, and they give us the areas and stuff that things were happening, and we go to those specific areas, and we try to the souls that are really tormented, and there are a few in there. We do our best to give them the ability to move forward.
Yeah. So what sort of information have you been given then, Wes? Obviously you're all, you're tough guys. You do a tough day job. Is there any information that you've been given that has almost reduced you to tears?
Well, we have been given information about, there were people with epilepsy in there, and of course everybody knows in this day and age epilepsy is treatable.
Yep.
But they were experimenting, opening their heads up and touching certain areas of the brain and that sort of thing, and which is completely this stuff was going on behind closed doors, and the public and the community didn't know this was going on, and there'd be a lot of individuals in there, a lot of patients who would have family but may not want to have anything to do with them, so they would select these individuals to take part in these experiments.
It's almost people who are expendable.
Yeah, exactly. And it's tragic. These people. As I say, I'm being very. When I say that we're very evidence driven, we've also learned a lot over the last couple of years that we have a psychic medium that works for us as well. And even though that's not a physical evidence, we've kind of broadened our horizons a bit and expanded our knowledge, and had her come in and she's an amazing person, Carrie Lynn Shellhorn, and she's our psychic medium, and she has the ability to, if these spirits are there, to pass them on, like the tormented souls. Now, again, this is something that we don't necessarily believe is happening. But she seems to do something. I don't know what it is, but she does a very good job of it, and we believe in her 100%, even though some of the things we're not really sure about ourselves, the way that she does things.
Yeah.
But it's all about that learning, right? And learning different ways and not closing your mind off to things. You have to keep that open mind. And, like we like to say, we're 80% evidence driven and 20% we use like a psychic medium, spiritual stuff. And that's come up a lot, because before it was when we started, it was 100% evidence. And we've let her come in and she's really proven us just spectacular, just amazing, so it's really opened the doors for us.
So how do you feel about these sort of places that some people go into then, and the owners will say, don't move any spirits on, I don't care how they feel, you don't move them on, and yet you've got spirits that you've said that, is it Kerry, did you say, is the medium? Kerry? Was it Kerry? Sorry,
Carrie Lynn.
It was Kerry or Kelly. Sorry, and she will move these sort of tormented souls on. It could be that they're not moving on, but the fact that somebody's listened to them, it's put them at ease, and they're just happy to now go about their day, almost, so to speak. But how do you feel about these venues where owners will say you do not move spirits on, you leave them as they are, almost like there's sort of zoo animals?
Well, this is it, right? And it all comes down to ethics. There are souls and you've, everybody that's listening and yourself, you've been to investigations where there are people that are there that are not tormented. They want to be there. They feel comfortable with being there. Maybe their loved ones are there or whatever. And as I say, this is all, I can't say this for sure but this is the way I feel. Is that these souls that are just there for whatever reason, and they're not tormented and they want to be there, then just leave them. But if they are people that are really mixed up or have a lot of issues, then we don't have any problem with moving them on at all, especially if they're tormented, because there'll always be other souls that are there. There's it's it all comes down to ethics, and we really strive on the ethical component of the paranormal investigating. I mean, we've had an older lady whose house we went to, and she says, "Listen, I think my dead husband is here. He's been, I feel him at night, I guess I better be careful the way I say it. But yeah,
you've been sensible for at least 20 minutes, Wes. That's not bad.
I know. You see, this is what I mean. I fight.
It's a struggle, isn't it? It's a constant struggle. So
anyway, there might be something, like on the pillow, or I'm not even going to get into it because you've lost my the way I'm thinking. But anyway, we'll say to her, are you bothered by this? Like, are you afraid? And she's like, oh no, I just know he's here, and I'm just comforted with the feeling that he's around me, and we're like, do you want us to move him on, or would you consider that? And she's like, oh no, I feel really, I'm comfortable with it, and so we're like, okay, well then, if that's, what you want, that's what you want. But if it's something that's terrorizing, like a family, which we've had, and most of the people that own the homes, they do not want that entity in there. That's a different story, right? So, but we've never really come across, that instant where, a person says, don't move them on. They've never ever given us any kind of direction that way. Like whenever we go to the old prisons in the States, they never say, listen, you leave everybody here. I don't want you guys, they never ever say that. It's just, you go in and you do your thing, and, so that's never been an issue for us.
No, I've heard it happen over here more than once, unfortunately. But with Picton having such a sort of a contrasting sort of two main backgrounds, and you say that you do seem to get more contact from when it was on the more medical side than the military side. Have you had any military stuff come through that's your research has been able to verify that yes, actually that could be real?
We've had EVPs of what sounds like marching soldiers. There's a specific location within one of those buildings that's an old gymnasium, and I think they may have used it for marching in the winter, because Lord knows the Canadian winters you can't march outside, because as I speak right now we're getting a ton of snow. So
really,
marching inside, and it's very you do the whole idea about imprinting, right? And how, every in the winter, every Friday they do the marching, and it's at a specific time every Friday, and it just imprints on time. So when you get the EVPs, you think, okay, that's possibly an imprint. They're not actually there. It's just, they're walking by. So we've gotten that, and normally what we do to elicit that kind of a response is we play marching music, Canadian military marching music. Like the Air Force has their own music that they use for marching. That's specifically for the Royal Canadian Air Force. Back then it was. It's now just the Canadian Air Force. But we play that, and it does elicit responses. We have had EVPs after doing that. We've had things move within that gymnasium space that we haven't been able to detect what it is, but there's movement. So definitely you really have to work at it, though. Like for the military stuff, you really have to work at it. There was only one very serious death there, where a soldier hung himself in one of the stairwells.
Oh, crumbs.
And that was we do get different readings. We get a lot of and there's no electricity or anything on that property at all. So when we get some kind of a response, it's you kind of question what exactly it is. In that specific stairwell, in that specific area, we seem to get a lot of large K2 hits. So, so
Tragic. It'll be interesting though if you get to go over to the runways and the hangars, what you pick up there, because I'm pretty sure I found accounts of some of the training flights that crashed. So it would be quite interesting to find out, if the activity is a bit more then, because that has been predominantly aviation and hasn't had the sort of cross use. What last question, because we're nearly out of time, believe it or not, Wes. When people tend to investigate, especially stuff where there's been people who've got some kind of mental illness or mental disability, they tend to infer that the activity is more scary. It's more, I don't like the word, but lunatics is one of the words that gets bandied around. Do you ever feel unsafe in Picton, or has there ever been an incident where you've not known how to handle the evidence that was coming through because it's made you feel, or any of the team for that matter, made them feel unsure or made them feel they might be in some kind of danger?
Well, not specifically. I know one of the occurrences I had, I was in one of the rooms there, and this black, it was probably around 1 or 2 in the morning, and all the windows there are smashed out, and there was ambient light coming in from the moon, and it lit up quite a bit of the room, and all our lights were off, and I could see like this black mass on the floor moving from one area to another, and I'm like, in the dark, I'm like, okay, is this my eyes like messing up with me? Like I'm really trying to focus. However, that being said, like, when you think of black masses, immediately you think of, American television, paranormal shows and demons and that sort of thing. And it didn't have any effect or anything. I looked at it and I was like stunned by it. But that being said, like most of these places, you say like, are there things there that make you kind of fear or afraid? I think a lot of these, and this is all presumption, but I think a lot of these souls are misunderstood, and so there are people there that, they all had some sort of medical or mental complication, and a lot of them speak. A lot of them had like, I'm just having a mental block, but that, that mental disability where they can't speak, but they're still very smart. Anyway.
Selective mutism, that kind of thing.
Autism.
Autism, right, okay. Yeah.
And, a lot of them had brains that were like of a child, and they would be adults.
Yep.
So, it's hard to, if they are trying to communicate, it's hard for them to present what's going on to them from the brain of a child, So there's a lot of things that happen that you go, okay, is that threatening? Like, is a rock being thrown at you, or, there's a big bang, or, something like that. Like, is that something that, is scary, or are they just playing tricks on us, Or
is that the only way they know how to get your attention?
Yeah, well, exactly, right? You just, and we don't know that. Again, we don't know that, but it's just, I just think it's a case of being misunderstood. I mean, like that place, there's so many things that happen there, but the bottom line is that, the demon thing and all of the devil and stuff like that, like, never have I ever felt like there's a demon or something in there that was going to carry me off, or, and I don't know if it's just because of the way I think and the way I feel and the way and what I believe in, but I just don't believe that has ever affected me in any way out of all the places that I've been. I've never felt like, oh my goodness, like I am gonna, my mind is gonna explode. I've never ever felt that. I've never felt in horrific fear, and I'm not saying that couldn't happen at some point, but at this point, that's never happened. I mean, I've had incidences that have happened where I've kind of shook my head and go, wow, that's cool, or what the heck was that? But never where I felt threatened.
No. I'm glad to hear that, because anyone who knows me well will know you've basically said what I say about these sort of places every single time, is that people assume that because it's something that a I'll say normal in inverted commas, person wouldn't do. It's got to be malevolent, or it's got to be this, it's got to be that. No, think about how they would have communicated in life. That might have been the only way they could communicate, is by throwing something, or growling, or pulling your hair, or whatever it is. And it's there, that's, you know, if they had that illness in life, they're going to have it in death. So it doesn't necessarily mean it's nasty. So if anyone wants to get over and investigate Picton Heights, if they're over in the sort of the Toronto area, how do they go about doing it, Wes?
Well, let us know. And we do public investigations there about 5 or 6 times over the summer. We always do a charity one where we give the money to victims of crime. Sometimes it's victims of child abuse, but it's generally something that's to do like law enforcement related. And then we do other events too, where if somebody out there is wanting to come to Canada in August, let me know at a good time, and then I can let you know a good date that you can come into this area, and we can take you out there.
Wonderful. Well, Gemma very kindly put the link to your COPS page on our chat room, and we'll share it on the Parasearch pages as well. But thank you ever so much for being my guest tonight, Wes. I really appreciate it. I hope I didn't catch you out with any of the questions. I don't think they were too probing,
No. And thanks everybody in the chat room for coming and listening. And
teasing me, yeah.
Teasing you and getting you off topic. But I look forward to investigating with you in a couple of weeks' time.
Yes, indeed. Well, that's been Wes Coleman of COPS over there in Canada, talking about Picton Heights and amongst other things. If anyone does want to get in contact with him, just go along to the COPS Facebook page. I'm sure they'll be happy to hear from you. On that note, don't forget, make sure that you've clicked, shared and subscribed our YouTube channel. If you want to listen back to this recording, it will be available on Spreaker shortly. But really, on that note, until next week, when I will be talking to the lovely Mark Dudley about Rougham Airfield, somewhere I absolutely adore over here in the UK. But until then, have a good evening, sleep tight, and don't worry too much about things that go bump in the night.
Thank you for listening. Don't forget to join us for more shows throughout the week. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, and the World Wide Web to keep up to date with all the shows right here on Parasearch Radio.